Okay, Tony Iommi is rightly regarded as the greatest riff meister in rock history. Whether you're talking about War Pigs, or Paranoid, or Iron Man, or Hole in the Sky, or Black Sabbath, or Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, any number of Iommi riffs that are up on the Mount Olympus of heavy metal. There have been many other riff masters like James Hetfield, or Eddie Van Halen, or Richie Blackmore, or Jimmy Page, but no one has patented quite as many legendary riffs as Tony Iommi. So is there a secret to what he does? Is there a formula? Is there a DNA of his particular type of genius? Well, we're going to talk about that in this video. Now, one of my viewers recently pointed out, ostensibly quoting Camus, that genius cannot be analyzed. But despite this very real possibility, we're going to take a stab at it in this video and talk about 3 reasons why I think Tony Iommi wrote the best riffs. In addition to providing a little bit of my own analysis, we're also going to listen to Tony Iommi talk. So let's get going right away. So my first reason is because he was always trying to capture a mood and an atmosphere. He wasn't just looking for a cool guitar riff, he was looking for a cool guitar riff that created a specific mood or feeling. And in this regard, it's similar to what's known as program music in classical music, and it has a little bit to do with soundtrack music in movies. So I want to let you hear what Tony Iommi himself said in this respect. Here's Tony Iommi talking about atmosphere.
Even so, you were a part of this whole kind of vibe and the whole scary music thing. I think Ozzy Osbourne, your vocalist, says it was you who came up with the idea of writing scary music because you used to practice across the road from a cinema showing horror films.
That's right. Well, we used to, I particularly, and Geezer, the bass player, we really liked horror films, and it was just that feeling you got of being frightened as such. And I thought it would be good to be able to do that, because that really excited me, and to do that in music would have been for me, what we did. You know, it was great. I really liked to have that sort of same feeling from the music.
All right. While the idea that Sabbath concentrated on creating horror and scary vibes in the early days is completely true, the atmospheric quality of their music broadened over time to include majestic and epic and even optimistic and hopeful sounds, which shows that it was the idea of creating atmosphere that laid the foundation for their musical creations. So if you start with that premise, like you're going to make a movie, you're going to end up with a much different type of riff than if you just sit down and say, well, hey, let's find something that sounds really wicked and really cool. You've already got a broader direction, a more grandiose vision if you're sitting down and you're like, I'm going to find a riff that creates an image and a mood and a feeling, and then we're going to proceed from there. So my second reason why I think that Tony Iommi's riffs are the best is due to the fact that he had his fingers cut off in an accident and was forced to change the way he played due to having prosthetic fingertips. And what the result of this is that it's harder for him to feel the strings on those fingers. He can't feel them. So he has to hear the vibrato, and he has to hear intonation with his ears purely to understand where he's at sonically. And this creates a little bit of a lag. This means he has to have a little more space between his phrases so that he can hear them and digest them. And this probably makes more sense to people who are guitarists, because if you couldn't feel the bend of the string and you had to listen for it, it would slow you down a little bit. But I want you to listen to Tony Iommi talk about it himself, and here he is.
It made me creative, because I used to be able to play proper chords and just the way everybody else plays, you know, conventional way, but I had to come up with a different way altogether, because I just couldn't play the same way. So I had to work on vibrato, I had to work on how hard to press on the strings, because obviously I couldn't feel anything apart from pain. You couldn't feel how much you're bending the string like you could with your finger. There's no feeling there.
And even today, it's the same.
Oh, even today, it's still the same. And I still use tips that obviously they're made for me now.
You could afford it.
Well, yeah, but I still have to put leather on. I've got an old jacket from the 60s that I cut up. It was a full jacket. Now it's about that big now, and I use them and it lasts probably for 3 weeks, and then I have to put a new piece on.
Okay, so putting leather over his plastic prosthetic fingertips is also going to create not just a difference in the way that the guitar sounds, but in the way that you're going to approach your songwriting, and then the way you're going to approach your riff writing. So while I'm not attributing his genius to the accidental loss of his fingertips, I'm saying that his genius was able to integrate the loss of his fingertips. And because of this, there is a much more deliberateness and much more indelible quality to the riffs that he comes up with than what other guitarists do. It's almost like he's putting more thought and time into every single phrase. All right. My number 3 reason is simply this: power. And by power, I don't mean necessarily volume, and I don't necessarily mean the theme of the song. What I mean is that you're playing with absolute conviction. And before I play you one last clip of Tony Iommi talking about this quality, I want to mention something that Jimmy Page said in an interview in GQ magazine called Grouses of the Holy, where one of the first questions he was asked during that interview is what makes a band heavy, and his response was, well, I don't want to say it comes down to attitude, but basically it comes down to attitude. So I want to play now what Tony Iommi said about having absolute conviction in the music that he plays. So here he is.
No, we believe in what we did, what we play, and everything we play is we have to feel it and believe in it. The audience, you can only judge by we've been here for 45 years.
Okay, so what he's saying there in his own humble way is, hey, we're honest about what we play, and because we're honest about what we play, the people who listen to our music feel this honesty, connect with this honesty. What this has to do with his riff writing is that he's playing with absolute honesty and conviction. So you're never going to have a situation with Tony Iommi where he's got some weak riff that he's putting out there because he's trying to get a hit song. Or he's candied up a really great riff and smothered it under some sort of ridiculous production so that he can try to get a hit song. What he's doing is he's sticking to trying to create an atmosphere, trying to create power, trying to play what he actually feels deep down inside, and hopefully the audience feels it too. And the last thing I want to say about this is all of this has a lot to do with blues. This is the foundation of blues music. To take an unorthodox technical situation, an unorthodox tuning, a broken instrument, some kind of strange take on the conventional way of doing things, add to that an atmosphere and absolute feeling, and you create your brand of blues. Which goes back to another thing that Tony Iommi and the rest of the members of Black Sabbath have consistently said, which is they don't consider themselves a heavy metal band, they consider themselves a heavy rock band. And I think that's their way of saying, hey, look, we have blues roots, and so many of the bands that are known as heavy metal bands are neoclassically based. They're based more on classical music. The blues element of Black Sabbath is very important in their overall sound, and it's tremendously important in Iommi's approach to riff writing because, after all, riffs originated in the blues. So, while I don't think we've solved the mystery of why Tony Iommi is the greatest riff meister of all, I think we may have at least put up a few items for interesting discussion, and now I'd like to hear what your thoughts are. This is what I think, but what really matters is what you think. So if you have an idea about this or any other topic connected to classic or contemporary music, please drop it in the section below. And remember to like and subscribe. Also check out the join button that's available now. If you choose to become a member of the channel, you'll gain access to members only videos, members only polls, members only badges, and other cool perks you'll see when you click the button. You can also help out the channel by clicking on the Buy Me a Coffee link, going to the Buy Me a Coffee site, and leaving a donation. Every little bit helps this channel stay strong. Thanks a lot.